What's poppin', family? How y'all feeling this week? If y'all new here, my name's Ciara, and this is Self-Made Energy, where we want for nothing because we can manifest anything. This week, you guys, I really want to just jump right into it because this project is fire. All right, that's it. I have no words. It's fire. You're gonna see it. You're gonna be like, cause it's fire. Cause it's that fire. I'm telling you, it's that fire. But yes, this week, you guys, I want to make like a jewelry stand because I recently been going through my jewelry and I got some new jewelry and it's just like I have nowhere to put it, especially since I've moved. Everything is just like everywhere. Like literally there's stuff everywhere. So ignore all the mess you see in the video because y'all about to see it. Ignore it like it ain't even there. It ain't happened. My house is spotless right now. But anyway, yes, back to why we're here. I'm gonna make this cute little jewelry stand literally out of cardboard, spray paint, some fabric, and a mirror, y'all. Like literally, it took nothing. This project was so cheap and it came out so perfect. Like, why am I still talking? Let's just get into it. Alright, so the first thing I did was come up with a plan and find a reference photo and gather a bunch of garbage to figure out how I was going to make this work. So I'm not really going to dwell on the whole plan. If you want to see it, you better pause this video and take a screenshot because we are not about to waste time staring at my notebook. So the first thing I did was find a box that I knew would be around the same size as the mirror I was going to use. And I'm using a regular over-the-door hanging mirror, and they usually come in like 13 inches by 49 inches or somewhere around that size anyway. So my box was a little bit smaller, but that's fine. We'll worry about that later. I separated the top of the box from the bottom of the box, and right now I'm just going to focus on doing the inside of the cabinet. In order to do the inside, I took a couple bolts that I got from Joann's Fabrics and Crafts, and I basically just cut them into the size so I can use them to line the sides of the box so it will be nice and smooth and not like raggedy and bumpy because it's so janky in there. And yes, you see my baby. She is very nosy, so she's about to be all over this video. Hi, Tootie. Luckily for me, just cutting the bolts in half was the perfect size. And here you see me with 2 extra boxes because I needed to fill in that extra space for the mirror that I was telling you about earlier. So here's 2 little boxes. They're not the same size. They kind of look like it, but they're not. And it's definitely going to throw my design off later, but whatever. I had to use what I have. And for now, we're going to make it work. And luckily for me, the box I was using already came with corner braces. So those came in clutch. Thank you, thank you. You definitely should brace your corners. If you don't have corner braces, just put a little extra tape or put some extra glue in the corners because you don't want them to split open later. And make sure when you're cutting your bolts or whatever you're going to use to line the inside, make sure you cut the bottom very evenly. This step is very important because this is the part that's going to be showing. And of course, I was rushing trying to get this done and was not really paying attention to how I cut the bottom. So of course, it's not straight and you can definitely see it in the final design. So make sure you're cutting your bottoms very straight, or if you're not going to cut it straight, make sure you have something to hide those gaps that get left behind. I also messed up on this part as well, fitting the bolts together, because in my mind I was just going to cover everything up. So it's just like, whatever, make it fit. And I was squeezing everything in and creating like creases in the bolts, and it definitely left a crease in my final design because I ended up not covering the whole side. So don't be too aggressive when you're putting these bolts together. just in case you end up having some showing. You don't want it to be creased because you forced it into place. But yeah, once you're sure everything is measured out and it's gonna fit correctly, you're gonna want to put a generous amount of either school glue mixed with water, or E6000 glue, or hot glue gun, or tape. However you want to make it stick together, it's really up to you. I just happen to use Elmer school glue mixed with water because I know it makes cardboard really stiff once it dries. So that's what I used. And I also used the hot glue gun just to hold it into place while it's drying. So I just lined all 4 sides of the box, made sure everything was nice and sturdy, and then I moved on to gluing the 2 bottom boxes to each other to make sure that I had enough room for the mirror that's going to be the door. I didn't want it to be overlapping too much. And like I told you before, these 2 boxes were not the same size, so I did use some extra cardboard just to pad one of the boxes to make it close to the same size as the other box. It still wasn't the same size, but it was closer. Once I was pleased with how the boxes were sitting together, I glued them together with Elmer school glue, and I put some tape around it just to hold everything into place. Once that was done drying for a while, I came back and I applied another generous amount of school glue and water to the bottom of the 2 boxes, and I also applied school glue to the bottom of the main frame so I could secure those 2 pieces together. I also used a hot glue gun just to hold it into place right away, but of course in my mind that wasn't secure enough, so I also grabbed some tape and just taped up the sides so it could be a little bit more secure. At least in my mind, it was definitely more secure. I need a lot of mental stability, you guys. Also, make sure you take into account when you're securing these pieces together that they lay nice and flat and flush against each other and against the back, because if you're going to mount this on a wall, you don't want it to be sticking out on the bottom or not fully flush against the wall. So make sure everything is nice and flat on the back, alright? Once I was done with that, it was basically time to figure out how I was going to design the inside. And since you've seen my notebook, you already know how I was going to do that. I have this great serrated knife from Fiskars. It's used to cut any kind of wood really. So it was perfect in cutting these tubes. And these tubes literally came from the wallpaper that I used for my office. This is the tubes it was wrapped around. So again, completely free. I also picked up this ring holder. The original price was $9.99, but I had a $5 coupon, so I got it for $5. And I just had this mirror laying around the house. But yes, I know I wanted to change the color of this ring holder because black was just going to throw off my whole aesthetic. So of course I had to make it pink. And why not make it this very cute pink velvety fabric? So I completely destroyed the ring holder and reconstructed it, because that's what artists do. And to change the color is super easy, you guys. I didn't even bother taking the black fabric off because it wasn't in my way. I just wrapped the pink one right over it and hot glued it into place like nothing. Like, you're really gonna wrap like 12 little burritos and glue them together. That's how you get this done. And you're definitely gonna want to keep in mind the direction that you place these back into the box. Since this is velvet fabric, you're going to be able to tell the difference if they're not all facing the same direction. So when you put them in, give them a quick little swipe. You'll be able to see which ones are not the same as the others. If you look at my box, you can see at least 3 of mine are not the same direction. Just pull them out and flip them around. Make sure everything has the same color gradient. Since this is velvet, you will be able to tell. Now this part I kind of just included just in case you wanted to wrap your tubes in fabric. This is how you do it. You roll it up like a burrito and you glue it just like the ring holder. But I didn't end up using these tubes, so I'm just throwing it in just in case you want to do this. But I also was thinking that I could use these to make another jewelry holder in like a sky blue color, because I do have some sky blue velvet and I think it would match perfectly with this fabric. But I don't need 2 jewelry holders, so if I make another one, I'm gonna post it up for sale. So if anybody's interested, let me know in the comments. But once I was done wrapping these, I realized that I wanted the colors to be more pink and like an antique gold, and I didn't know how well these would work together, so I ended up not using them, and I just spray painted everything gold instead. At this point, the structure of the frame inside is done really, so I'm just gonna focus more on decorating the inside. So once I spray painted everything gold, I had these really pretty pink and gold papers with like gold foil on it. Oh my god, so cute. But yeah, I have so many different ones, I couldn't choose, so of course I picked 3 different ones, because why would I want the same print across the whole thing? No, I'm lying, I didn't have enough to put the same print. So I had to use 3 different ones, but that's alright because it came out fire anyway. Honestly, every project I feel like I learned more and more that it's not about what you see or what you want to see at the end. It's about the process and how you get there. Because along the way, my plan changes so many times. Like my original drawing is not anything like my final product. And most of the time it happens like that. I change my mind a lot. But I'm also very happy with the changes that I make in the end. So don't be afraid to make changes, and don't be afraid to use what you have. Like as you can see, a lot of what I'm using is just scraps and little bits and pieces of things that I had laying around, and I put them together and they look amazing. You can do the same thing. All right, but okay, enough motivational conversations, because I feel like I needed that and I feel like y'all needed that too. So let's just get it out the way now. We are fully motivated and ready to get back to the task at hand. So I took my beautiful papers and I literally just put glue on the whole bottom and lined them up the way I saw fit and glued them into place. And I also cut out a spot for the mirror because I knew I didn't want that mirror to be covering up a whole bunch of paper. I could use that paper for something else. So I cut that circle out and I saved that piece for later. I also used the exact same method of school glue and water and a hot glue gun to apply the ring holder into place as well. And you see it's so cute and fancy now. It's pink and gold. It literally looks nothing like how it did when I bought it. Once I was done securing the ring holder into place, it was time to move on to figure out how I was gonna hold these bracelet holders in place without having them being stuck in place permanently. And you guys, this gave me a headache. Like I literally was racking my brain trying to figure out, how are you gonna hold these bars up? How are you gonna hold these bars up? Let me tell you how I held these bars up. I ended up taking some scraps of the pink velvety fabric and literally rolling them up into little fat tubes and gluing them together until they were thick enough to hold the tubes into place. Like literally, that's all I did. There's nothing inside that. It's just fabric. I just rolled it up and put glue in it, so the glue made it a little bit more hard, which made it just sturdy enough to hold the bracelet holders in place. I also messed up this part a little bit because I usually pre-measure off camera because it's easier for me to measure without messing up the view. But I didn't measure this part, so they're not even at all. Like these bracelet holders are just kind of jankily hanging on there, but it's for my personal use, so I don't really care. And you can't really tell unless you're staring too hard, but yeah. You definitely want to make sure you measure these out when you're installing them. And I also have these pieces of foam board that I had painted glitter on because I thought I was going to do a glitter wall. But that didn't work out. So I have a bunch of foam boards covered in glitter that I never used. So I spray painted it gold, and I'm going to use that to cover the inside of those little boxes at the bottom. And this part is pretty self-explanatory, y'all. I don't even need to go into details, but I will just for the sake of the video. You figure out what you want to cover it with, you measure out how much you need, and you trace it onto that item, and you cut it out. And then you put some glue on it, and you glue it into place. It's literally that simple. Once I was done with all of that, I decided to let the inside dry and move on to doing the door. So I pulled out the top of that box, and you see that giant hole? Oh my God, we're gonna deal with that later. Cut out the box to the size of the mirror that you're using. And like I told you guys before, my mirror was a little bit longer, so I did have to use some pieces to extend this a little bit. But that's fine. Again, you're not going to see any of this once everything is done. Just in case you also need to make extensions, I literally just measured it out, cut it out, and then I taped it into place. I taped it around all sides just to make sure it wouldn't bend or fold later. And that's all I did right there. I also put some tape over those couple of holes that I had in this piece, because there was like 3 holes in this piece, but that's fine. Tape it up and act like it's not even there. We're good. You're also going to want to apply tape to any folds that was in the cardboard already. If there was a flap, you're going to want to tape that flap down straight. Again, because you don't want it to bend or fold later. Now that I have the structure set for my door, I just put the mirror on top and I traced out exactly where I wanted it to be. Now this part was important to me because I knew that I wanted it to be fluffy and not flat. So I knew somehow I was gonna have to thicken this piece up. I had to thicken that revenue stream, y'all. That was definitely a Get Him to the Greek reference for y'all that didn't catch it. I love that movie. But anyway, I took some extra bolts that I had from Joann's Crafts and Fabrics and I just glued them to the back of that piece, just so it could be a little bit thicker. I didn't want it to be heavy, but I did want it to have a couple inches. Now, I would recommend that you wait for this part to dry, but of course I was very impatient and I wanted to see how it was going to come out, so I didn't wait for it to dry and it was falling apart, but that's fine. I purchased 1.5 yards of heavyweight batting, but I didn't even use the whole thing. I probably used like only half a yard, so I still have enough to make a bunch of other stuff. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing materials. You probably want to measure stuff out before you purchase so you don't over or under purchase. And all I did was take the batting and hot glue it everywhere across the whole back, and the part that I measured out for the mirror, I just glued around that whole part. So wherever the mirror is going to be, there should be no batting, but everywhere else should be covered in batting, the sides as well. This would also be so perfect to tuft. Like, oh my God, I wanted to tuft it so bad, but I was also intimidated. I didn't want to mess it up. So maybe on the next one, I might tuft it. I don't know. It just looks so more elegant tufted. But anyway, back to the task at hand. In order to cover these corners, I literally just wrapped it like I would a present. I folded the sides down and I glued it, and then I folded it down again on top of itself and I glued it again. And everything looks nice and seamless. Once I was done securing all the batting into place on the door, I moved on to securing the fabric. And oh my God, once the fabric got over it, it just started coming to life. Like, it was alright before. I was wondering where this project was going, but once the fabric touched it, I was like, yes, I know exactly where I'm going now. In order to secure the fabric, you want to do the exact same thing that you did with the batting. You want to do that with the fabric. So make sure when you first start out the fabric, the part that's going to be under the mirror, you want it to be very flat, like as flat as possible, because you don't want anything obstructing that mirror from connecting with the cardboard when it's time to connect them together. So make sure everything is flat underneath the mirror and glue it along the sides. You don't really need to put glue along the batting. It's really unnecessary. The fabric can just lay over it. As long as you pull it taut, it'll be fine. And make sure before you cut your fabric that you leave enough room to cover all the sides, because you want it to have a very seamless look. You don't want it to be pieced together. You don't want to have a couple seams showing because you missed the spot, you know? So don't cut your fabric until you're sure that it's going to cover everything first. Once I was sure the fabric was all nice and flat, I glued the mirror on top with some E6000 glue and a hot glue gun, and I let that dry. And of course, I didn't notice that it stopped recording. So the beginning process of me covering the cabinet with batting was not recorded. But I literally did the same exact thing, so I guess you didn't need to see it anyway. All I did was use the batting to cover as much of the raw edges that I could, and then I wrapped the fabric around it. And in order to secure the fabric without having a raw edge, I actually glued the right side down to the cardboard first, and then I flipped it over so only right sides would be touching and the raw edges would actually be tucked inside. So if you're not going to cover it somehow with some sort of embellishments or some sort of trim, you are going to want to apply the fabric in this manner just so it doesn't fray or come apart later. I also used the same exact method of folding it like a present to cover up the sides, and I secured it on the back. You also want to make sure when you're securing the extra fabric on the back that you want it to lay flat, especially if you're going to mount this on a wall. You don't want it to obstruct the way it lays on the wall once you're done. Once I was done wrapping all the sides with the fabric, I still had a couple raw edges left showing at the bottom around those 2 extra boxes that I added. So in order to cover that up, I just took some pieces of foam board and I cut it out to be the exact same shape, and then I just took some random pieces of fabric scraps that I had around left and I glued them to the foam board. And then I took that piece that I made and I glued it to where it needed to be to cover all the imperfections. And y'all, it looked so much better once I did that. Once I was done making everything look pretty, I attached the hinges so I could actually have a functioning door. And now it's really starting to come together. Like, you see this? Remember when I told you about those imperfections in my design that was going to be thrown off later by those boxes? See that? It's alright though. Literally, I can deal with that little gap because everything else looks so good. That little space means nothing to me. It's just space for more creativity to slip inside. And of course, I thought I was done, but no, there's more. In other news, it's on the wall. And the door won't stay closed. But it's on the wall. So, feeling partially accomplished and partially defeated, I found this piece to keep everything closed. And y'all, do y'all see that? That was just a bracelet and it was broken. But yes, now it has moved on to bigger and better things in life. And with that final detail being put into place, this piece is finally done. Y'all ready to see this?